Ohio, everyone.
What?
That's good morning in Japanese.
I was actually wondering this morning how many ways there were to say hello.
I looked up a thesaurus and dictionary.com and translator.com, and I've just been compiling them
I
for
love
this
this for us.
very
Casey
this
says
very
hi.
podcast. Hello, Casey. Ohio
She's
to
gonna
you
join
too,
us.
Casey. Yeah, no, why not? Special guest. I'm down for it.
Yeah, she's got a lot to say apparently. She's not talking to anybody. There's nobody here, but that's okay.
So what's up? How are you? Well, first let me welcome the listener because they're more important than us. Welcome,
Indeed.
listener. Thank you for joining us yet again. We're on episode 6 now. We're cooking. We're cooking with
What?
gas, baby. I know. This has been a lot of fun. It's something I look forward to all kind of week or two. Hearing Casey just drop that knowledge on us one bark at a time. It's truly revolutionary. Um,
It's funny. Like they come into healing sessions all the time, and I used to get really like worried about it because I mean, you hear them; they don't sound polite.
Yeah. No, they
It's
got a
all,
deep rough, like,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, both of them
throaty.
do. Yeah. But you know what I find? It's actually like super helpful, like during sessions. It kind of like breaks things up, breaks up energy, and I find we can like release stuff. So I'm like, all right, we just embrace it now.
I can see that. They're
Hmm.
dogs, they're just like nature. They're just like doing their thing always. They just come in and like bark and you're just like, "Oh yeah, shit's just like going on, all the time." It's good. No, animals
Indeed.
are the best. I mean, I have a cat, Luna, and it's just I don't know. They're just tuned into something different and the guys have said, a cat, they know they're holy. Like
Hmm.
dogs, trees, they know they're holy. They're just living this incarnation, doing their thing, not worried about any of it. And it's refreshing.
Yeah. And, I know for me, like I adopted Casey, both of mine are rescues, and I adopted Casey in a time in my life that I was really trying to heal from some pretty big trauma. And I have to tell you, like, she has been one of my greatest teachers. Like as a puppy, she taught me infinite patience because she was horrible. She was like the worst puppy ever. She like ate walls and laptops and like
Oh
all
my
kinds of crazy stuff.
gosh.
Like she was so bad.
Eats laptops. That doesn't no part of that sounds fun.
None of it was. She was a very expensive puppy because she got into everything.
Oh no.
And, but she also taught me, I think that was the first time I could really have an embodiment of unconditional love. Because even though she ate on
Mm,
my shit, like I still, no matter what she ever did, and she didn't have to do anything other than be her cute little self. And I just love her unconditionally.
yeah.
So that was a good kind of like template for me to learn from, I guess. So thanks, you
Yeah.
guys.
No, absolutely. I mean, pets offer that to us, and they don't bring the human baggage that we already like associate with humans, right? Like we meet someone, we're like, oh, they're like this, they're like that. Am I gonna like them? They're gonna like me. With animals, it's just like, okay, this is what it is, and we just fall in love with them. We understand them. They kind of understand us in their funny ways, and
Hmm.
it's a beautiful, unique relationship. Animals, and it's so weird to me when people are like, oh, like, do you really know if like a cat loves you or your dog loves you? And it's like, no, that's bullshit. Like you can feel it, like
Oh, yeah, they love us.
100%. Like my cat, she goes a little crazy when I leave. She doesn't
Hmm.
eat, and she's a fatty. She likes to eat, and she doesn't eat when I leave. Like, you know, that's love right there. And she cuddles with me
Hmm.
every morning and loves that. And yeah, I mean, just because they don't come out and say I love you, or buy us trinkets, that has nothing to
Yeah.
do with the expression of love.
Yeah, because I feel like they do express it in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Like after they eat, they'll come up and, kind of say, "Hey, thanks so much. That was so
Yeah.
yummy." And like, cuddle and get the loves and the belly rubs and stuff. And I don't know, I think that we can learn how to listen to them and communicate with them more effectively than I think we can.
Yeah. No,
So,
absolutely.
I don't know. And then Leo, he's going to chew on his bone in the background here, so
I love
they'll
it.
be part of us today.
I love it.
So, yeah, so things have been really fantastic, I feel like. I was actually thinking about it this morning and wow. I feel like first off, I feel super appreciative to be where I am. Um things are just everything's really great. And I'm like not even waiting for the other shoe to drop, which is a fun
Mm,
experience of just like
yeah.
being in the allowance of everything to just be really fantastic. And so that's not to say that, things haven't been coming up that require attention because they do, but it's not like, I don't know, my life is so much different than it used to be. And I am so grateful.
Yeah, no, I totally understand there. And I think the energy of gratefulness is so powerful. I mean,
Hmm.
it is a bit of appropriated by culture of just like, oh, be grateful for everything. Wake up every day and just be grateful. And like that, I understand the like kind of eye roll that comes with that. But
Hmm.
to really just move to a place of gratefulness for
Hmm.
what the abundance that we do receive, for the challenges and obstacles that allow us to grow,
Hmm.
for our alignment, for how much we have grown, and for what does come to us, and just moving to a state of gratefulness for just even as something as simple as just like some sunshine that feels really good
Hmm.
that day,
Hmm.
like that can change the momentum of the whole day, both in your how you are that day and what comes to you that day.
Yeah.
Really, like that alignment to gratefulness is so powerful. If you can, and it can be so simple to tap into it, just drinking your favorite drink and really sitting and enjoying it. And like that,
Hmm.
I think it's really tied with the energy of mindfulness as well, because
Yeah.
if you're really grateful, you're really present for what's happening, and it just creates just such a pretty nice, lovely feedback loop, I think.
Yeah, like really great momentum. I like that you brought up how people talk about, oh, be grateful and like kind of toss it around. I feel like it gets kind of like diluted sometimes.
Mm,
And my teacher, Diane, always talks about how we can practice being in appreciation, which is gratitude lifted. And so for me, like I really did for a long time struggle with gratitude. Pfft, I was one of those people that you were talking about a minute ago. I was like,
yeah.
screw this, this is BS. So for me, approaching it from this level of, oh, I can be in appreciation, that was something that was a little easier for me. And, to be able to loop into that gratitude and hold that gratitude and then lift it to appreciation. So that might be what I would offer here. If anybody else kind of has a little solar plexus response to the idea of like, gratitudes, because we don't want it to be empty. The whole purpose or the whole power behind it is in the feeling of it. So if you struggle with that, that's what I'd offer. How about that?
No, I love that. And like you're talking about, the weight of something, or the alignment to it, is the honesty in it, right? Like you can't pretend to be grateful. Like the universe, God always
Hmm.
knows when you're, tricking yourself, or,
Yeah,
playing the part of, I'm the one who's
hmm.
grateful today. Like, oh, isn't this great? I stepped in mud. Yay, this is so fun. Like it's not gonna work. And the
Right.
universe is
Now,
gonna keep throwing stuff at you until you're like,
yeah.
okay, fine, this fucking sucks.
I do think that there is something to be said for getting into the habit of trying to be grateful. Like
Mm,
if you're starting at a place where your frequency is like way far below gratitude, then I think it's okay to kind of like reach for that as like a goal. So even if you aren't totally feeling it yet, maybe you can still practice it because I think the feeling comes with the habit, right? Does that make
yeah.
sense?
No,
Mhm.
absolutely. And I think that's why I like your articulation of appreciation, where it can
Mhm.
just be, all right, I'm going to try and appreciate this thing today. Or,
Mhm.
it's a beautiful day. I'm just going to go out there and feel appreciation. And whatever might be happening then that day, which might suck, you can still find those moments of appreciation and align to that energy, and just slowly feel like, okay, this is lighter, this is easier. And
Mhm.
afterward, when I am in that state, things do tend to flow easier. Some of those
Yeah.
problems maybe get dissolved, or, I learn an easier way, or whatever.
Or they just don't seem as big, you
Yeah,
know?
exactly.
Yeah. I think what was it? I don't know, I think it was last week. Yeah, like, ooh. So I'm feeling really great right now, but I had a little dip last week where I was just feeling kind of overwhelmed because I wasn't in the moment. And I had all these like stupid little things, like, just it just felt like one of those. And I feel like a lot of us get into this momentum of one thing after the other. So
Mm,
fortunately, it wasn't like one massive life thing after the other. It was just like stupid little annoying things, like things that just needed to be added to my list and fixed. And looking back on it, like, I think it's really funny now because I got bent out of shape. And, when I was able to, first off, I have a great support system that I was able to kind of say, hey, I'm not feeling great right now. I need some help. I need to kind of get this off of my chest and have some feelings about it. And then so I can move through it and move past it. And so they did. They allowed me to have my feelings about all the stupid little things. And then afterwards, I was like, oh, okay, this isn't so bad. I can take a big deep breath around this and allow this to come into perspective as the truth of what it is, which is tiny little annoyances, tiny little ways to, what do we call those? They're contrasting experiences that allow
mm,
me to gain clarity about how I do want to flow energy because I'm in this and I don't like it and this ain't it.
yeah.
This is not working. So, yeah.
I think that's
Um,
beautiful. And I think it does become simple in the way of, okay, this is something I don't want to be in. What's underlying this that I can learn from and realize, okay, I need to, there's something for me to learn here. And just like that subtle difference as opposed to letting it stack up or letting it, take you over and just,
mhm.
falling into that and letting like we were talking about last week, the small mounds of, rocks and sand to turn into mountains, right?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and that was a helpful conversation for me too because I was able to come back. So it was like the day after that and the day after that that I like my little pieces of dirt turned into mountains and I was like, "Wait, no, like this is not how we operate anymore." So I had fallen back into old patterns. And I was really grateful to recognize them relatively quickly. Because I remember years ago where I would just be in that pattern for very long periods of time and I would build up this really gross momentum where then I
Yeah.
look around and like everything in my life sucks. You're like, oh my god, this is like a total disaster. So there's another thing to be appreciative of for me, I guess. I'm super appreciative that when I do wobble it's not for massively long periods of time. Yeah.
No,
Cool.
absolutely. That's beautiful. And I've been reading a book about like the chakras and kind of energy. And one of the things it talked about, which I thought was like very simple but beautiful and insightful and just makes a lot of sense, is like everything in the universe flows in cycles, right? We have the seasons,
Mhm.
we have, personal,
The moon
yeah,
cycles.
moon cycles, we have personal cycles, and energy follows the same thing. We have energetic cycles. And so,
Mhm.
when I think about my energy journey, it's often been like, okay, I learned something, I have an experience of like expansion, and it's like, whoa, this is great. Like life can be easier, it can be lighter, I feel wonderful. And then there's a contraction that comes after that,
Mhm.
almost like the rubber band opens and then it snaps back because it has to almost have that contrasting experience for you to say, "Oh yeah, okay, I learned this thing. This is what it was like, and I don't want that anymore." And then that's
Yeah.
when the expansion turns into your actual shape as a rubber band, right? And then comes the new thing to learn. You get the extraction, the
Mhm.
expansion, and my friend described it once as like an engine. For an engine to move, it's got to have the piston shoot up and down, right? Like the
Yeah.
expansion back in the contraction again, and that's where
Mhm.
the momentum and movement comes from. So
I
I
love that.
yeah.
Yeah. My teacher Diane has always called it a ring past knot, like these kind of uncomfortable experiences. And I think collectively we're kind of going through this right now too, where you can look and see, oh, okay, there's a lot of this kind of friction in the world. And if you're not watching this, you're missing out. If you're only hearing this on Spotify, I'm sorry.
Yeah, our hand
So
gestures
like
are just so essential.
they're so essential. So, right? So, like, things are vibrating really uncomfortably, and it's like, oh, you can feel it. And then all of a sudden it goes, and then it expands into this kind of quiet place of, ah. And then kind of like the rubber band, we've expanded the rubber band. And then when it's time to expand again, we get uncomfortable again. And we get this kind of like friction or contrast or whatever you like to call it. And then we go once again. And it's like a, but I do think that it happens in cycles. And I also think that as we are refining and lifting our frequency, that old crap that still wants to be attended to, that wants to be reknown or reunderstood or released, comes up to be reknown, comes up for that opportunity to say, oh, okay, here you are. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like that illustration a lot. And I think, again, it also comes back to what we had talked about. I don't remember. It was a couple podcasts ago, I think. But wait, what was I going to say? I totally lost my train of thought there. Wow. That's
That's
super
okay.
interesting. Wow. It's probably something terrible. And so those those above me were like, "Nah, don't say that, you idiot."
No, no, no. It's okay.
Oh man, totally lost my train of thought. That's so
That's
interesting.
okay. We'll take this in a totally different direction,
Let's do
because
it.
I was listening to the replays. Tom and I are both students of the guides. We through Paul Selig, and we're both going through. We just finished up the most recent intensive where Paul started channeling the next book, A World Made New. And so I've been listening to the replays of those, and I loved your question. Do you
Hmm.
remember that? It was a couple days ago.
Yeah.
Um, do you and so I'm totally gonna call you out here.
Uh-oh.
No, I just think it'd be cool for you to share, your question and the advice you got, if you remember.
Yes. So I can actually pull up the transcript. Let me try and do that while I talk, to try and get the exact answer. But yeah, so I basically asked a question about my changes in myself when it comes to, okay, I don't have the transcript. That's a bummer. Um but yeah, I asked a question about, basically, I've moved to a new stage where I'm starting both energy healing work, and I've stumbled upon channeling. And uh there it feels like there's similarities in the skill sets in
Mhm,
what you're doing. And I was curious about how I could attend to these in the highest way, how I can grow through these, and do my best in both of them and be the highest kind of transcriber radio for the work. And so what I do remember of the answer was, you know, Paul can both tune into you as a person, which is super interesting because you tell yourself stuff like, but it's very direct. And, it's like the thing you had been thinking around for a month, but never quite had the courage to just say to yourself. And
mhm,
so when he did that, I basically told myself I have to come to it clean, come to it in a
mhm,
clean state. And that to me rang very true because it feels very much like, and my experience of it is, you are the transistor, you are Krishna's flute playing the song of, energy of source, in different aspects. And so to come to it clean is for to allow it to flow through you as beautifully, as cleanly, as much clarity as possible. And if you're not coming with all these thoughts, with the detritus of the past, with ideas around what it should be, those are what can kind of get sticky and get in the way
mhm,
and kind of cloud the experience. The other thing I remember him saying was that, they are similar skill sets. And just like I said, are we are not the ones doing it, right? We're not the ones doing the
mhm,
healing. I'm not the one,
mhm.
yanking down, a channel from above, like, tell me
Right.
what to say. Like, that's not what's happening. And what we are the radio. We are an allowance. We
Mhm,
are taking this energy, allowing it to flow through us, and releasing it in the highest way we know how, whether that be into the client for their healing, or out into the world in terms of a release of energy or words, in the case of channeling. And then, do you remember exactly what the guide said? But because I don't. They said
Mhm.
something like, "Let the experience. You can't know until you have the experience."
Yeah, and that was really profound for me, and it really was about like you don't know until you know, right? Like you don't know until you're in the knowing. And I jotted some notes down somewhere this morning about knowing and about how, knowing is it happens from moment to moment, like you're knowing now and now and now, but you can
Mm,
only know for now, right? Like in the now. You can't know for then or then because that's not where you are. I don't know if that makes actually any like logical sense, but
no, yeah.
but energetically it makes a lot of sense, right? um and I do think that they really hit on as far as like the allowing, and I think that's a big thing that a lot of us do struggle with, is we do try and bring that history in of this is what it should look like, this is what it should be, even, I'm sure a lot of the people listening to this also are energy workers in some form or another, and I do think that a lot of energy workers get stuck in that they're trying to do things like, well, it's supposed to look like this. Well, this is the protocol. This is how it has to be done. But I
Mm,
think it's a much more flowing, intuitive kind of process. And I do think that it becomes a practice of just kind of getting your personality body out of the way and allowing the truth to kind of come in. So I thought that
yeah.
was really cool. Hmm.
No, absolutely. And it's funny. I mean, we've talked a bit about this uh, after last episode, but the guys have talked about how time isn't real. It's a construct of
Right.
humanity, and in fact, things take place outside of time, and but in sequence. And
Hmm.
when we think of sequence, we're just like, oh, isn't that a new form of time? Well, no, it's almost like a spiral where like things are stacked on top of each other, and there's alignment within the spiral, and all sorts of crazy stuff that are I don't understand. But what I do understand is like the experience of things happening in sequence and not time. And once I kind of opened up to that, that really has been my experience of the world in many ways, where I do
Hmm.
experience things way more in sequence than in time now. And that's kind of what happened with challenge. Why can't I speak right now? That's what happened with channeling, where my first experience, it just kind of happened, where
Mhm.
I was in meditation and all of a sudden I was just like rocking back and forth and there was just this energy flowing through me and I was just like, what is going on? Like very visceral experience. And I was like, all right, well, fuck it. What if I try speaking? And
Mhm.
it just started coming out. And I had a few experiences like that. And then, but I think in time that happened first, but in sequence, I don't think it did because a few days ago, maybe a week ago, I did a channeling session where I was just, it felt like my first time actually. Like it felt
Mm.
like the first time I was actually channeling, where I was just in my head and like getting caught up in everything. And is this real? What's going on? Can I say this? Is this the right word there? And just getting lost in it. And I bring this up because I think that was the sequence had to happen out in time in a different way so that in time I could have the experience of channeling
Mm.
before I got to being Tom, the guy who's channeling, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Because if I didn't have that experience first, where it was like, oh, okay, this is like happening, this is a weird, like totally new experience, something's going
Mhm.
on here. Like I needed to have the experience to know where then I can later have, okay, I'm channeling. What the fuck's going on? Let me have all these questions, like that,
Yeah.
that new, that, personality self experience. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah. It does. And I feel like people can probably relate to that. And even if it doesn't make total sense, I think that it, like on a conscious level, I think it makes sense on an energetic level, which is really where we're all working, right? Like, when we're doing energy work, I know when I'm doing sessions with people, we are having conversations a lot of times, but it's not so much about the words that are coming out as much as I've been told that the frequency that comes out along with the words, kind of like when the guides are working with Paul, how the attunements that they use are encoded with frequency. And everything's frequency. So it makes total sense that language would be as well. So we're shifting energy in multiple ways. Yes, we're actually like looking at the energetic bodies, and we're looking at, okay, this is flowing well, this needs this, whatever, whatever. But as the conversation is happening, it is creating the potential for the healing to happen as well, even though it's not actually at all about the words. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, that's kind of been my experience of things as well.
Hmm.
And it's interesting because it's nice in that you have that experience first for the knowing to occur, right? Like you have an experience to tie to these ideas and concepts, and without the experience they are just kind of empty. And that's, I think we've all had, religious or whatever personal spiritual teachings in the past where someone has said something and it's something of truth, right? But they're not saying it with the right vibration, and so it comes out empty. Like we don't
Mm.
feel what that actually means. And I think Donnie Darko is actually an excellent example of this. And I talk about this in my book, where there's a scene where, there's this teacher who's, kind of got a stick up her ass, and, is all about like piety and like, religion, blah, blah, blah. And she's teaching them that every decision either comes from love or fear.
Mhm.
And Donnie stands up and he's like, "This is bullshit. There's a million ways to like decide something, like blah blah blah." And he gets in all this trouble. And the beauty of that scene in the movie is like she's taking a true teaching, which by the
Mhm.
end, Donnie actually learns. He's like, "Oh shit! Like every decision is made from love or fear, and I'm gonna decide from love." But because it was her that was giving the teaching, and she didn't have the level of vibration or the true knowing to really teach it, like it came through as a false teaching to him, and no one
Mhm.
actually like learned what was a true teaching. And so I thought that's just like such a beautiful scene in cinema to depict, like I think a very real phenomenon that we've all felt of, one friend
Yeah.
giving us advice and being like no, and the same friend giving that advice and being like, oh yeah, that resonates.
Yeah. Yeah. There's someone in the same sphere of the world that I operate in. We're acquaintances, let's put it that way. And I find it really fascinating. It's a very good example of exactly what you're talking about. You know, this person has the right words, and the energy behind it makes me scratch my head a lot of times because it just feels off.
Yeah.
um and I'm pretty sure that I'm sure I have been guilty of that as well, and we
Oh, I
learn
know
through
I have.
experience, and
Yeah.
we like, so
Yeah, no,
let
we
me
all
not
have.
say, so I think the practice really has been like seeing this person in compassion and holding, practicing seeing them in truth and saying, okay, I think their heart's in the right place. It's just kind of like there's always this image that I get when I'm working with people, and it's like a cartoon that's run out of its body, and
Mm.
they stop, and then the body takes some time to like catch up,
Oh, that's
and
interesting.
so that's kind of like what I see with this person, and I see it with clients, and I've seen it with myself as well. And I think we all kind of do it, where it's very much ingrained in or entrenched in the mental body, but it hasn't kind of like gone all the way through, like it hasn't soaked through all the layers to where they can actually embody it yet. But when we hold them in the space of truth, I know who you are in truth, I know what you are in truth, I know how you serve in truth, then I think that it helps create the potential for them to step into that. And being really gentle around the noticing of it and the judgment of it. Because I caught myself doing that, like, oh, are you slipping into judgment? Maybe a little. Maybe you should relax.
No, I
It's
I
okay to
I
notice, but
totally get
withhold
that.
judgment.
Yeah, yeah. I think we all almost start at that position where we hear words and
Mhm.
we know them to be true. They resonate with us. And then the personality self kind of takes on the teaching and spins it and uses it as it would like. And we all know this, like the person who takes a phrase of truth and like use it in a context that like lets them get what they want, like,
Mhm. Yeah.
oh, well, we just got to live in the moment, and then just, goes and does something
Drinks
that's,
like 85 martinis or something.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like,
Woo,
I
we're in
don't
the
know if that's what
moment.
Buddha meant. I don't remember that being in the teaching. But, I think that's kind of where we all start on the path where we have an
Mhm.
idea that we need to fix ourselves, and unfortunately fix others too, usually
Mhm.
comes with it. And so the personality self wants to use these as like hammers and
Yeah.
screwdrivers, and like hammer things into people and hammer things into us and screw things into us. And that's not how this works at all. Like, it is
Mm-mm.
really the energy behind it, behind what is being said, or even what isn't said in that moment, just the presence in being with someone.
Yeah.
And I think it is a useful step along the path for us to, learn those things and then try and use them in the personality body, and then be like, oh, well, shit, this isn't working. I guess I got to surrender it. Right.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, man,
but
that's been such a big one for me, the surrender. Always surrendering.
yeah, yeah. But we can't get to the point where we're taking on spiritual teachings. And unfortunately, we all know, we've met people like this. We take on spiritual teachings and just like use them as a tool to exist in the personality self and kind of get what we want. And
Yeah. Yeah, we don't wanna weaponize those, because that's the word that comes in with that is,
mm,
when you use them with the intent to get what the small self wants, that feels like weaponizing it. And I don't think that's the intention behind any of these teachings, no matter like who you're following or where you're learning from, or, whatever path you're walking. And I think that comes with wisdom. I think that comes with an expansion of frequency and a true understanding. And I think for a lot of us, it's a necessary step on the path, And so and the other thing that I know is that I wouldn't be able to see these things in somebody else if they didn't exist in me. So
oh,
if I'm
absolutely.
noticing this stuff in someone else, then I'm like, okay, where am I also doing this? Because I wouldn't be able to see it if I didn't have it.
Yeah. No, that's
So,
like Yeshua's teaching. Like, we're so quick to point out a speck in our eye when there's a log. Excuse me, a speck in someone else's eye when there's a log in our own. And like,
yeah.
I was listening to like a historian that was talking about like Yeshua was like super funny. Like, that's a joke. Like, just, the idea of like a speck, like seeing like this much in someone's eye and being like, oh, you. And then,
Yeah.
in our own eye, we just got this like giant fucking log just sitting there, like coming out of our head.
Oh my
And,
gosh. Yeah.
but
It's
it
funny.
is
The
so
image I
easy.
just got is like, yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Um,
Not at all.
the image that came along with that for me is like we're both standing around the mud pit and I'm pointing out how your shorts are dirty, but it looks like I've been rolling in it. Um
I like that. Yeah. Like, ooh, you got a little mud stain right there on
Little
your
something
khakis
there.
when you're just like head to toe drenched in mud.
Drenched in it.
Yeah,
Been
that's
rolling
good.
around.
That's good. That's
So,
funny
I
stuff.
think another like super important thing to do like around all this is, like you mentioned, bring the humor into it. Like nothing lightens the energy of something like humor. And I don't mean like I mean, don't get me wrong, I love good sarcasm, but that's not high humor, right? I mean more like holding it lightly to where you're noticing, you're observing, you're saying, ah ha ha, here we are. I see this thing. Thank you so much. I think
Yeah.
that's helpful.
Absolutely. And, we're
Hmm.
humans. Humor is entertaining for us. It keeps us engaged, and it yeah, instantly like lightens things and re-engages, I think, our mind to what's happening right now. It's a good way to like clear
Mhm.
anxiety as well, just laughing, just instantly almost clears up the
Oh,
chest,
yeah.
clears up the solar plexus. So
Yeah. I have a great nervous giggle. I
me,
bring it
I've
everywhere
never
I go.
noticed that. I would
No,
have never
no.
known.
Never would have guessed it. Yeah. No, I think everything's funny, like, especially when it's not, Like, don't sit next to me in a funeral. Like, that's like
Oh boy. All right.
Uh, is
I
it
feel
card
like we're
time?
ready to pull cards. Yeah, we're on the
Yeah.
same wavelength. I like
Yeah,
that.
I love it. You're first today.
I'm first today. Okay, yeah,
Mhm.
that's true. That's true. All right,
Do you
so
have a
do you
question?
have a question? Oh God, stop reading my mind.
Get out of my head.
For real. All right. Do I have a question? Whew. I don't think I do. I'm curious about what's next. So I'm
Okay.
gonna ask that. What's coming next for me? What should I prepare for? Um, that feels good for me. What about you? Do you have a question while I shuffle?
I was thinking earlier today, what was that question? Oh, I know. What do I need to know to be in more service to myself and those that I'm actually, working to be of service to?
Mm,
Mhm. So I guess a better way to phrase that is, how can I refine my energy to hold the highest possible vibrational frequency? How about that?
mm. I like it. Good question. It's way more articulate and good than mine, but whatever. It's fine. It's not a competition.
I won.
All right, I'm gonna ask and pull here. What do I need to know? I'll refine it a bit. I'll spice it up. I'll make it fancier. What do I need
Hmm.
to know to embody the highest vibration that I can and to prepare for all the ways I can be in service to others? How about that?
Mm,
Okay, let's see what I pull
that's
here.
good.
Ooh, it's a fun card. Openness. I like the
Oh,
that it feels like a lot like the answer I got from Paul. So I like that
that's
synergy.
exactly what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, here we go. Openness. Let me take a sip of water. Interesting. Observe, evaluate, and make inquiries before forming a conclusion. When the moon is waning in a crescent phase, it is a good time to begin to review endeavors and correct mistakes. It is time to throw out what you no longer need and clear away excess and old energies, including any clutter you may have accumulated. In addition to discarding excessive material things in your life, eliminate any unhealthy behaviors and relationships. You may find that you are trying to decide between two options. This card is not about making a decision, but more about taking the time to really listen to your heart and your inner voice. Ganesh advises you to gain more information before you act. This knowledge can be in many forms, including your own innate knowledge, self knowledge, secret knowledge, or even more esoteric wisdom. You may find what you are attaining might be both mysterious and magical. Hmm.
Ooh.
You are in a conscious process of creative release. Give thanks and gratitude for the things you have accomplished. Don't feel rushed or pressured to begin a new undertaking. Review your goals and regroup accordingly. Once you have all of the necessary information, you will begin to feel motivated to set some new goals and start some new projects. Interesting.
Hmm. Yeah.
So, uh, I think when I'm reading, I kind of also try and tune into the energy and what part of it feels very right to me. And
Mhm.
I got a lot around like, you know, clearing away what you no longer need, any clutter, any old energies you may have accumulated, and
That's what I tuned into too.
yeah, and kind of then tapping into that more innate knowledge, that self knowledge, and the even more esoteric or magical, and so
I'm like, "Ooh,
I
that's right up my alley."
yeah, and so like to me, this feels like a good card around that. In you know. I've started a lot. Our last card was we had the male energy, right, of the fire fairy.
Mhm.
I think
Yeah.
I think that was last or two episodes ago, and you know, that was the action of doing. And I think did what I needed to do. Now is about clearing out the old, stepping in and being open for the new, for the
Mhm.
self new, for understanding myself new, for the magical that comes through, and aligning to that.
Yeah, and that's very much in alignment with what we were talking about earlier about cycles, like you've
Mm,
been going through the portion of the cycle that's very action oriented, and now it's time to get to the portion of the cycle where you're letting go, which, the timing of that is perfect. It's with the moon phases, and I know this is published after we record it, but as we're pulling it now, like the timing is really, really beautiful. Um and I really feel like that's great advice for me too. I feel like
mm.
that was, for both of us.
I feel
So
like the
I
cards
actually,
usually are.
I think so too.
There's always
And I'm sure
crossover.
that, yeah, like, I feel like we're doing a lot of like similar stuff,
Well, we're almost
even though
like
we're,
also entwining our energy with the podcast. I feel like we're both like entwining our thoughts and energies as to what's happening with us, and then the cards like relate to not just us but also the podcast energy. I feel like.
I agree. So with that said, while you were pulling, I suddenly had the urge to use a different deck today. So I'm going to use the
Ooh,
Shaman's Dream, which I love this deck. I had like a kind
ooh,
of like the
pretty.
Wisdom of Avalon that I normally use. I had this like instant connection to it, and I haven't used it a ton since we moved, but I don't know, it just feels like the right thing for today. So
Sweet.
I know you rephrased our question a little bit. Um, okay, so it was, to put it the most eloquent way possible. What do we need to know or uh, embody to elevate in frequency to enhance our presence and being? How about that?
Love it. I love it.
Okay. Okay. All right. Ooh, okay. So the card I have here is the Eye of the Needle, intentionality.
Interesting.
And isn't it such a beautiful card?
Yeah, that's dope.
Um, Yeah. So if you're not watching, it kind of looks like the sun with an eye through the eye of a needle, and the needle seems to be holding other needles, which interestingly I haven't noticed before. And when I'm looking at this, there's actually five needles, and five is the number of change. So let's see what we get with that.
Ooh.
Yeah. Okay. So intentionality, clarity, and positive outcomes. If you look through the eye of a needle, what do you see? Summon the experience of being so singularly focused on the task ahead that it becomes natural to remove everything that is superfluous, every distraction, every non essential, so you succeed. What is, in this case, the definition of success? In order for the threading of the needle to happen, everything not in alignment with your goal needs to go. This is the only way you'll get what you need: shrewd discernment, the willingness to winnow down the needle thread connection to its essence. The eye of the needle looks so tiny, but once your intention threads through it, a vast opportunity is presented on the other side. The needle can mend,
Mm,
can sew things together to make something meaningful and new. You're experiencing success right now. Stay true to your desires, to the work you need to accomplish, so you are laser focused on the experience of creating and manifesting. The outcome is assured by divine forces.
ooh,
Huh.
that's a good
That's
one.
really in alignment with yours, too.
Yeah. No, and specific parts of that definitely spoke to me and the energy. But what do you think about it?
I feel like for me, it very much felt like the advice is to keep focusing on the appreciation, keep focusing on holding the highest frequency that I'm able to hold, and it will continue to expand in its lightness, right? It'll continue to kind of drop that old stuff. Because I feel like that's what a lot of us are, I mean, that's what all of us are doing, is dropping the old stuff so that we can be lighter and freer. And the feeling that I get around that too is also like I don't have to worry about anything, which, like as I hold the space of trust and knowing that we're in divine time and everything is working out, it will continue to do so. And when I get distracted, to just do like I did last week and say, "Oh, oops, here we are. We're a little distracted. This isn't working for me. Thank you so much." And now back to the show. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. I love those takeaways, and feel like two of the parts that really spoke to me were, one of them was, which I think is so beautifully put, like the eye of the needle is so, seems so small, and yet when you thread through it with intention, what's opened up is like a whole new vast world on the other side.
Mhm.
And to me, that really spoke to the vibration where we want to be, where we want to set a real intention to embody that, right? And to have our attention on that aspect of life, right? Not the personality self, not the old energies that we're used to, or the old habits, or, even other people's thoughts and vibrations and ideas about the world. And in fact, you know, push through with that intention, and then there'll be the new world on the other side, which is the teaching of the guides right now. Very much, behold, I make all things new, moving things toward this new world.
Yeah, I love it. How great. I like this deck for us.
It's a
This
fun
is a
one.
win. Yeah,
I think
it's
the
good.
other part that was super interesting was, and it relates to what you were saying of, you know letting the rest of things fall away as you
Mhm,
focus your attention, right? Because
mhm.
what energy or thought that I've been working with is like, okay, what if my way of service is really just continuing to refine and to lift, and in allowing that, I'm allowed to give the divine all the other things that normally take my attention, all the old stuff, all my ideas about what I need to be doing or what I should be doing, or money, this, that, whatever, letting
Yeah,
them handle that, and me handling, embodying my
yeah,
highest self, and that service. And like that, I instantly got like, oof, that was, a wave of good energy around that, of like, yeah, you focus on this, we'll take care of that. Like, this can be
yeah.
the partnership right now.
Mhm. That's interesting you say that because that's exactly the conclusion that I've come to recently is that my number one job is to focus on embodying the purest frequency I can. And as I do that, so I've always called it being in flow. The guides call it, stepping into the upper room. Other people call it other stuff. But I've realized that that's my number one job. And so that's the question, the first question I ask myself, am I in flow? Yes. Okay, great. Keep going. No. Okay. What do I need to do to get there? Because, like these days, I can't actually do my job if I'm not in flow. Like it requires me to be in flow to be able to read other people's energy and, help them kind of shift it. So I think that's really beautiful. And, it really kind of takes the guesswork out of it because it answers the question of,
Mm.
oh, should I be doing something? Well, no. I mean, maybe. Like, you might find that once you're in flow, you're inspired to do something, and in that case, by all means, follow that inspiration, take that inspired action, because there does have to be this match up, I loved The Secret, and I also felt like it left some parts out, because it talks about, like, energetically aligning to the manifesting of the thing, but it kind of didn't really talk about, oh, you actually still want to take action, toward that thing. But I
Mm.
think that we wind up, when we allow ourselves to be in flow, we end up doing things so much more easily, you know? So instead of like going out and getting clients, it's holding space of trusting that the perfect clients for me are coming to me, and lo and behold, here they are, you know so I still get the inspiration to like attend this meeting. Okay, great. And then I meet somebody who ends up becoming a client. That wasn't my intention going to the meeting. It was just a fun byproduct. So here I am just really enjoying my experience, and ta-da, like my needs are also getting met. So it's so much more fun to like do things that way.
Yeah. No, and the guides phrased it once almost as, make the highest choice of the day. And I like that
Mm.
because it it calls us in as participants to our life, which is vital
Yeah.
and important. And we need to take responsibility for ourselves and our lives. That's part of the work. It's not about saying,
Mhm.
like, okay, God, you come into my body and you live all the things and get all the things, but it also has to be the things I want too. But you do it all for me, and I'll sit here and like wait and manifest, And like, no, it's about stepping into your life, taking responsibility for your life, for your alignment, and at the
Mhm.
same time making each highest choice of the day. And I find when I step into that and I do that, my day does take unique turns in ways I wouldn't have chosen to begin with, and
Mhm.
fun ones and beneficial ones. And so I like that, you're saying totally right. Like, this is not a journey of us, slowly getting, from 1 hour a day on the couch to 14 hours a day on the couch. Like, no, this is about being active participants in the world, in service, in whatever way that comes about.
Mhm. Yeah, because the thing is, at the end of the day, we're always creating our reality. It's just a matter of, are we doing it consciously or unconsciously? Because if we're doing it consciously, we're typically going to enjoy the outcome so much more than if we are allowing ourselves to operate from these old unconscious patterns of behavior. Because we all have things that we are learning to lift, like wherever the distortions came from. Casey's got something to say about that. But wherever the distortions came from, if we just allow ourselves to kind of, I don't know. I don't know. This is a really interesting image because I see somebody with like a blindfold, just kind of like wandering around. What was that movie with Sandra Bullock where nobody could? I don't even understand like
Oh
why
yeah,
nobody
yeah,
could
like
look around outside, but
bird
like that's
feeder
kind
or
of
something like that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's kind of the image, right? And that's where most
Mm.
people. I don't think a lot of our listeners, I feel, but a lot of people in society are really kind of walking around with this blindfold on, constantly creating from an unconscious space and really not liking what they're getting. And so I think that there's a lot of power behind, I guess, tying back to the beginning here, tying back to the mindfulness, the
You're
awareness,
always so
the
good at that.
appreciation. Right? And I don't
Yeah.
even like mean to do it. It just kind of comes up.
No, I love it.
Thanks for
Makes
the
things
help, you
easy for
guys.
me.
Yeah. So maybe if you are listening to this and you are maybe struggling with what you're creating in your experience, see if you can pause and take a moment of mindfulness, take a moment of appreciation, and ask yourself the question, where am I creating from? Am I creating from a place of
Mm.
power, or am I creating by default?
Or by fear, which is, so many of us, create out of fear, not even knowing it. Just,
Yeah.
we think we're deciding, oh, I need to have a better life by doing this, or I need to do that, or this is what I like, and then you sit down with yourself and you realize, oh no, I'm just actually afraid of not having money, or I'm afraid of being alone, or
Hmm.
I'm afraid of not getting this or getting that. And we realize we are manifesting out of fear. We are, you know it's the same word, creating or acting out of fear in this way.
Hmm.
And all you'll get from that is more fear, or the lessons that come with that, which aren't always the highest lessons for us in terms of how we're learning them, you know
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's a tough place to be. And tuning into that mindfulness, that appreciation, can help you, you know reroute that track.
I agree. Yeah. And, I think that too, for the most part, most people's default is fear. But as you bring awareness into it, I think that we can shift that default to being a default of coming from love. Um, and that's a really powerful thing for us, I think. And man, I'm so grateful that we do get to create our own experiences. And
Mm.
I am so appreciative that I've had so much contrast in my life, where I really can be in appreciation of how glorious it is to be in this time, in this space. in this experience, you know,
Yeah.
like on this rock that's hurtling through space with all my friends. You know? Like,
You
how
know, it's
freaking
funny.
cool.
It is, and the guides at the beginning of the workshop had us. They had a little homework assignment, and
Mhm.
they encouraged us to write down two things. And maybe we'll give this to you too, listener, because it was such a good one. Write down two things that you never thought would change in your life, and that have.
Mhm.
And you know, from starting this work, so much has changed. I realized that list could be infinite and
Mhm.
in such a beautiful way. And when you do realize that, you can't help but be grateful. And I know, I earlier in my life, there was a time where every day I was just absolutely overcome with anxiety. I was so
Mhm.
anxious. I had so much fear. And it was physical to the point where I had panic attacks at times, a couple
Mhm.
times. And like, I never thought I was an anxious person, and that's how we're
Yeah.
categorized in society or by doctors. Like, you are an anxious person, and that's who I thought I
Mhm.
was. And today, I like never feel anxious. Like, it's actually insane. And when it does come up, it's like, huh, oh yeah, that thing's still
Oh,
around.
you.
That's so interesting. Like, oh, you're making my heart
Yeah.
beat fast. That's kind of cool, I guess. And then it's just, it just moves on along its way, and it just really doesn't
Yeah.
happen anymore. And this is,
Yeah.
one of the many things that I thought I was, or that was my experience. And I was acting from that anxiety in my relationships, in my personal life, in how I looked at the
Mhm.
world, and I created a reality around it and based out of it. And my reality today is so much different.
Yeah. One of mine was that I never thought I could have a loving relationship. I
Mm.
thought that for a long time, I really thought I was destined to just be with abusers for my whole life. And now I've been with Vince for over 12 years, and it is a loving and productive and
Oh,
happy relationship. I mean, we go through stuff too, and we have challenges and, challenging conversations, but
of
at the end of
course.
the day, it is a relationship based in love. Like, I overcame the subconscious need to create relationships out of fear. And
Mm. That's
here we are.
beautiful.
Isn't
That's
that
so
great? Like,
beautiful. Yeah. No,
how
absolutely.
freaking awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And encourage all the listeners to do the same. Write down two things that you never thought would change. And even if you're new to the spiritual path, I'm sure there's things you thought when you were even a kid or a few years ago that you were like, oh, I'm never going to get out of this, or I'm never going to be able to change from this, or, I don't have the courage to be able to do that. And I'm sure you're out there
Mhm.
doing it now, or I didn't think I'd have the determination to do this. And I'm sure you're out there now doing it. And so, it helps us realize that our reality is so much more malleable than we think. Our lives are so much more malleable than we think. And when we step into that and can appreciate how far we've come, bring that mindfulness to it, we then open up and we see, oh wow, like there is so much more possibility. I am not, it's almost like concrete. I am not this concrete statue that, is going to go about the world in this way. Like, I have freedom, brings the liquidity to it. Kind of, yeah, it's interesting. So I encourage you
I love
all
it.
to do that as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back and add some other things to my list too. I don't think 2 was enough.
It's
Not for
not.
me. Because, now that I look back, I love that you mentioned that. Like, now that I look back, I'm like, "Man, like, I now am living the things that I only dreamed about, like, 20 years ago,"
Mm,
you know? And
yeah.
it's cool because now the things that I dream about, I know I'll be living soon. And
Oh, that's
how
beautiful.
cool is that?
I
Right?
love that. I know.
And
I
again,
mean,
I have so much appreciation for that. Like, thank you, thank you, thank you.
absolutely. I sometimes like think back to how things were, even just like 4 5 years ago, like not even that long ago,
Mhm.
really, a few years ago. And it feels like an entirely different life and a different person. And, I can hold those things so lightly now, thankfully. And they were learning experiences, and I'm grateful for them, and they got me here.
Hmm.
But everything has changed, and I'm so grateful for it.
I love it. I think that's a great place to stop, right? On that note, like, man,
Yeah.
what can you even say outside of that? Other than we appreciate you.
Mm,
We appreciate our bajillion D listeners. So yeah, we're being in
one
alignment with that.
bajillion. Yep.
1 bajillion listeners. And so, with that said, if you enjoy this, please make sure that you like it, you subscribe it, you share it, you love it, you do all the things. Yeah?
All the things. All the things.
I love
Yes.
that. Awesome. So, anything else to add?
No, I think that's it. We're on YouTube if you want to watch. We're on Spotify and Apple and all the podcast places if you want to listen. If you want to do both at the same time, I don't know why you do that because there's already audio on the video. But hey, the more listens, the
But you
better. I'll
could.
take it. You could buy 8 different devices and play it from 8 different players all at the same time.
Would be in
I,
super stereo.
yeah, super stereo. We also have some exciting things planned for the future coming up,
We
so
do.
stay tuned. Stay tuned. Special fun stuff. So yeah, and if you have any thoughts, ideas, you want to contact me or Carly about our healing things, you could always email the podcast email, or you can email our personal, or websites, whatever. I'll drop all the links and stuff. So yeah, thank you
Love
so
it.
much again for listening. We appreciate you in mindfulness, in love, in intentionality. So thank you. Carly, thank you for joining me. Thank you for letting me join you.
Yeah.
This has been fun.
Always a pleasure.
All
Always
right, bye
fun.
guys.
Bye.